4 centuries before the Library of Alexandria, a king in ancient Iraq had already assembled the world's first organized archive. 30,000 clay tablets organized by subject, cross-referenced by author, protected by royal decree and strict scribal protocol. When archaeologists found it in 1850, they assumed the rooms were a storage area. They were entirely wrong. It took 30 years of scholarship to realize they had found the most sophisticated library system the ancient world ever produced. The king who built it was Ashurbanipal, ruler of the Assyrian Empire in the 7th century BCE. History taught you that the Assyrians were conquerors and destroyers. History never mentioned that they were also the world's first librarians. The Assyrian Empire, at its peak, controlled the entire Fertile Crescent, from Egypt to Persia and from Anatolia to the Gulf. Ashurbanipal ruled from 668 to 627 BCE. He was the last great king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. He was also, unusually for any ancient king, personally literate. He read and wrote Akkadian and Sumerian with evident fluency. He sent scribes across the empire to copy every tablet they could find: literary, scientific, religious, astronomical, and medical texts. He collected originals when he could, and demanded copies when he could not. The accumulation was systematic and entirely deliberate. The tablets were organized into subject categories: myth and epic, prophecy, medicine, astronomy, law, and practical administrative records. Each tablet bore a colophon, a label naming the work, the series it belonged to, and its sequence in that series. The colophon system meant any scholar could locate any tablet by subject, series, and sequence at any time with precision. This is catalog logic. This is precisely what modern libraries do today. Ashurbanipal was already doing it in 650 BCE. The tablets from Ashurbanipal Library are now held primarily at the British Museum. Over 30,000 have been catalogued. Curator Irving Finkel has spent his career at the British Museum translating and contextualizing the Ashurbanipal collection. His analysis confirmed that the library had a sophisticated organizational logic anticipating modern archival science by 2 full millennia. Among the tablets is the oldest surviving copy of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's earliest known literary work. The tablet containing the Gilgamesh flood story predates the biblical flood narrative and shares its basic fundamental structure completely. When translated in 1872, this tablet proved the flood story predated the Bible and caused a worldwide sensation. The medical tablets show a systematic understanding of disease categories, treatments, and clinical prognosis across multiple conditions. The astronomical tablets recorded planetary movements with precision that would not be matched in Europe for another full 1,000 years. The mathematical tablets showed calculations establishing foundational concepts later attributed entirely to Greek mathematicians by Western history. Ashurbanipal described his library purpose in a colophon, assembled for the reading of scholars and for the benefit of the future. He was the first person in recorded history to articulate a vision of preserving human knowledge deliberately for future generations. The library was destroyed when Nineveh fell in 612 BCE, burned entirely by a coalition of Babylonians and Medes. The fire that destroyed the palace baked the clay tablets harder, accidentally preserving thousands that would otherwise have decayed. The tablets survived buried under palace rubble for 25 centuries until Layard began excavating in 1845. Layard sent the tablets to the British Museum, where they have remained ever since, largely inaccessible to the general public. The Library of Alexandria was built around 290 BCE, roughly 350 years after Ashurbanipal collection. The Alexandrian library organizational model may well have been significantly influenced by earlier Mesopotamian archival traditions, including Ashurbanipal system. Historian Lionel Casson documented the history of libraries from Ashurbanipal through Alexandria and argued for a continuous archival tradition. His argument, the organized library was not a Greek invention. It was Mesopotamian, an idea the Greeks inherited and then extended. The Greek world had significant contact with Babylonian scholarship through the Persian Empire, which absorbed both intellectual traditions simultaneously. Babylonian astronomical calculations, originally from tablets in Ashurbanipal collection, entered Greek science through that historical and cultural contact and transmission. Every school child who studies world history learns the name of the Library of Alexandria. Almost none learn the name Ashurbanipal. The older library is more significant historically. It is also associated with a civilization Western history was taught to fear. The Assyrians appear in Western history as the archetypal empire of cruelty. Their intellectual achievements are rarely part of that portrait. The Library of Alexandria was destroyed and mourned for 2,000 years. The Nineveh Library was excavated and largely ignored. The Gilgamesh tablet found in Ashurbanipal Library is older than Homer, older than the Bible, and older than Athens itself. It tells a story about a great flood, a hero seeking immortality, and the acceptance of mortality. The parallels are unmistakable. The Ashurbanipal Library Project at the British Museum is systematically digitizing the full tablet collection for global scholarly access and study. As of 2023, thousands of tablets remain untranslated and unstudied. New discoveries continue to emerge from the existing collection. In 2015, a new Gilgamesh tablet was identified in the Iraqi Museum collection, unknown and unread for many decades. It added 17 previously unknown lines to the Epic of Gilgamesh. The oldest story in the world is still being recovered. Cuneiform scholar Stephanie Daly has spent decades translating Ashurbanipal tablets and carefully demonstrating their clear influence on Greek literature. Her work shows clear structural parallels between Assyrian literary texts and Greek epics that cannot possibly be explained by any coincidence. The Gilgamesh epic influence on Homer, Iliad, and Odyssey is now documented in comparative literary scholarship across multiple institutions. The Assyrian tablets in Ashurbanipal Library are, in part, the actual source texts that shaped the literature we call Western. The Western literary tradition did not begin in Greece. Part of it began in a royal palace library in 7th century Nineveh. The Assyrians were cast as the archetypal empire of terror in both the Hebrew Bible and in Greek historiography. The civilizations whose texts most shaped Western historical memory had strong reasons to frame Assyria as pure military aggression. When Nineveh finally fell in 612 BCE, those who had long suffered under Assyria celebrated. No one mourned the library. Western academic history was built on Greek and Roman sources. Assyrian sources were unread in European universities until the 19th century. Cuneiform was only deciphered in the 1850s, 25 centuries after the library was originally built and carefully organized. By 1850, the European view of ancient history was already fixed. Greece, Rome, Egypt, Israel, and Assyria was the villain. The library discovery did not change that hierarchy. It became a footnote to the Assyrian military narrative rather than a correction. School curricula still teach the Library of Alexandria as the origin of organized knowledge. Ashurbanipal Library is rarely mentioned. The tablets that formed the foundation of Western literature sit in a museum basement in London, largely untranslated and unread. The civilization that built the first library in history was remembered in the West primarily as the civilization that destroyed things. The ruins of Nineveh are in modern Iraq, near Mosul. The tablets from its library are now in London and Chicago. In 2014, ISIS destroyed major portions of the Nineveh archaeological site. The tablets in London were entirely undamaged. The tablets that survived 25 centuries under palace ruins also outlasted 2 world wars, a revolution and a brutal modern occupation. Ashurbanipal wrote that he built his library for scholars and for the future. He was entirely correct. The first library in the world is still being read. Most scholars reading it do not know whose library it was.